Does anybody have a question for the candidate?
Paula has a question online.
Okay, Paula, go ahead.
Okay. My subject is air quality in the Inland Empire and Morongo Basin. I've been told by someone who attends the air quality meetings that the largest problem we have are the trucks, because when the trucks ignite, they give off oxides of nitrogen, and that combines with the air and becomes surface ozone, which because of the mountains doesn't blow away. So the incidence of respiratory diseases among children is very high. And some of us old ladies are also having respiratory issues. It's very high. And I feel like I'm listening to all the conversations about our air and the pollution, and nobody's talking about the huge increase in trucks on the 10 because of the many Amazon warehouses and other warehouses that have gone in. The children in San Bernardino town, the city of San Bernardino, have a very high, extraordinarily high incidence of respiratory diseases. So my thing is, nobody wants to go after the businesses that put those trucks on our roads. We just get more and more of them. And I know some of it is Riverside County, but it's a Morongo Basin health issue. What would you do?
Thank you, Paula. Who wants to answer?
This is where, when I was talking before, in terms of using our leadership position in transport and logistics, I think we can make a difference. I haven't seen anyone talk about setting standards for electrifying the heavy trucks and heavy machinery that form a big part of this industry and are responsible for most of the emissions in this county. I think we have an opportunity to use that position to set the standard. I think we can all probably agree that the future is going to be electric, and there are questions about how fast we get there and how we get there, but it will happen, and it will happen at some point. And I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, do we want to be the leaders in that transition, or do we want to go down kicking and screaming and be the laggards? And if we do that, we're going to burden ourselves with even more unhealthy air, unhealthy children, unhealthy adults, and I think the time for change is right now.
Any other candidates?
Hello. So yes, the big trucks that are on our roads do emit a lot of emissions. And the idea is someday we're going to put these big lithium batteries in them so they'll be cleaner. They won't have the fossil fuel burning, but there is an environmental impact footprint from getting that lithium battery manufactured and putting them in there. It's an ongoing subject that is still a little controversial. We still have a ways to go to make it a better solution. It is better than burning fossil fuels, but it does open up another can of worms. So it's something I'd like to research more. I'd like to get actual professional people's opinions that are climate scientists, air quality scientists, but it's something that should be addressed. And we definitely need to fix what's happening now and not just continue the same old trucks with the smog and the fossil fuel burning as we have been for some decades now, causing our air quality to deteriorate where it is now.
Can the people on Zoom see us from here?
Come over here. This is where the speaker is.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah.
I grew up in this county, and I remember when I was a kid, the smog days. You couldn't go out at recess time. This is a long-standing issue in our communities, and we have a long way to go. A lot of you know I'm a single dad. I've got twin boys that are 6 years old, but I live right there in the middle of it. You're talking about the trucks coming through, they're coming through my neighborhood, okay? I'm raising my kids around that. We have to do everything we can to provide clean energy for those diesel trucks we're on the path of goods movement. Like 85% of the goods that come through our country start at the Long Beach ports and they come all the way through the Inland Empire. And that's not going to change. But what can change is we can advocate on behalf of, and we did this before a long time ago, it didn't happen. But you can fight for resources to come into the Inland Empire communities, into our county, because we're supporting so much of our national economy. We're taking the burden and the brunt of that. How come we're not getting something back from the federal government or even the state government for that, what we're doing on behalf of our national economy? But as a county board of supervisor, I think the jurisdiction there is you can serve on AQMP. You can make choices and make decisions that provide for cleaner energy, cleaner diesel trucks. And I think that's a big point. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go.
I'm gonna go to a question on Zoom really quick. I'll be back to you in a second. Rick Hamper, welcome. Rick was one of the original organizers of Indivisible Morongo Basin. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And thanks for providing this forum. My question is, many in the Morongo Basin community have serious concerns as to how land use services deals with development projects such as the Wonder Inn and the Flamingo Heights 640 glamping projects by not applying land use elements of the countywide plan and community action guides that should prevent them from being approved. Land use services, in recommending approval of those projects, acts in collaboration with the developers by not taking community needs into account. What would you do to reform the way land use services addresses such projects?
Which candidate wants to answer first, or did you hear it okay? It was a little muted. Here. Hey, Grant.
If I think I understood the question properly, this has to do with land use services and what is appropriate to build in various districts of the county. I'm not going to say I'm immediately an expert on the various projects being built in the Morongo Basin, but what I can tell you is, as a full-time resident in an unincorporated part of San Bernardino County, I have seen land use services be single-handedly responsible for, if you want to be aggressive, it's the destruction of the community. If you want to be generous, it's preventing the community from being what it can be and what it should be. I've seen county code enforcers drive up our mountain, say no to people, building spaces that will improve our community, and saying yes to projects that will not. I think part of this comes down to, one, having representation for unincorporated districts in county positions, and two, I think this comes down to not taking a one-size-fits-all approach as it relates to land use services and land management. Because what is appropriate for the desert is not appropriate for the urban areas, is not appropriate for the mountains. Clearly there are California building codes that need to be applied universally, but there are distinctions that can be made within those three areas, and I think it's important we take community feedback into account when we're undertaking these various projects.
Any other candidates?
Hello, so in terms of land use services and planning, one thing that is a good tool to use is an overlay area. Sometimes they're called special districts or certain design guidelines specific to neighborhoods. So for example, in Joshua Tree, they have a certain unique character. Big Bear has a certain unique character, as does Landers and Pioneer Town. I believe Pioneer Town is going to be looking into a special district overlay. That's something that is a tool that can help, but you need the right design guidelines, you need the right verbiage in there, and you need the support and input of each local community to build that plan, that overlay design plan, so it makes sense and it works for each individual community. So we're not in having a 2-story or 3-story Airbnb built in an area that just does not fit, does not work. Environmental factors are also different from area to area, so those need to be a huge consideration when making these plans.
Thank you, Jennifer. Ray, I see you, but I'm gonna go to, in person next and then you.
I'm not familiar with the projects that are part of the question posed, but I can tell you this, there's a lot of safeguards that we can put in place as a county board supervisor that are not being put in place right now when it comes to land use. And one of the most important ones is who you select to be your planning commissioner on behalf of your county. Okay, the planning commission, not everybody follows this, but they're making the major land use decisions and recommendations to the county board. And when we were there in 2012 through 2018, before James left, I made it a point. I talked to James. I said, hey, we've always had a planning commissioner down in Redlands, but we need somebody up here in the Morongo Basin. We need somebody here who can be a voice for this community on that very important planning commission board. And that person was Paul Smith. I know a lot of you guys probably know Paul, former owner of the 29 Palms Inn. But Paul was a leading voice on that planning commission when it came to all kinds of issues here. And unfortunately, the past 4 years, with my opponent in that seat right now, the planning commission, they took Paul out, right? They put somebody who represents, a special interest down in the valley. And I disagree with that philosophy. I think that's a good way to start.
Thank you, Chris. Matthew?
Good morning. Thank you all for coming here and sharing today. I really, really appreciate it. One thing about the big trucks, San Bernardino County has a lot of the truck yards, Swift Yard and Crest Yard, and everybody else has got a big truck yard here with thousands of vehicles in each location, and they idle all of the time. So one of the things that could be done immediately is ban truck idle when you're at your truck stop and everything else. There's technology out there now that they can put into the truck so that they don't need to sit and idle. So that would be one of the first things. We're currently having an issue down in Morongo Valley where the code enforcement folks are coming through. We're having different projects that we're working on, kitchen remodels and in community service areas and stuff like that. Issues in the fire department itself and et cetera. And every person that comes down to check it off says, one guy says, oh, you did it great, this is awesome, we'll sign off. But there's another inspection that you have to have. So a different inspector will come down and completely negate everything else that the first guy did. Said, oh, you did it all wrong, everything's wrong. There's no consistency when they come and certify these things. Help.
Do we need to speak to that, anybody, or is that? Okay.
I can just give you my candid thoughts, which are, I have dealt with this personally, my neighbors have dealt with this personally, local business owners in our community have dealt with this personally. I have seen unprofessionalism, I have seen nepotism in the county code enforcement department when a friend of mine called to complain about really unprofessional conduct and got yelled at because he was complaining about the guy's son. This is not behavior that's acceptable in any kind of environment, in particular a government environment where this is the very livelihood of people and our small communities. We need small businesses to thrive. We need people to be able to build and improve their houses. We suffer from this all the time. We have code enforcers who do not live in our neighborhood. They drive up the mountain, they say no, and they drive back home. There's no vested interest in our community. They do not care, and this is a problem that needs to stop.
We have a guy that's trying to build a restaurant. He got it all approved, and then another guy came in to inspect something and said, oh, your septic tank is all wrong, and you got to, another $1,000 there's no county code that seems
Inconsistent county code and corruption. Ray, sorry you had to wait so long. Go ahead. And try to speak loudly. Hard to hear.
Okay, thanks. Candidates and others in attendance have talked about giving the unincorporated areas of the county a voice, and particularly the Morongo Basin. Some of you are aware that I have written to the High Desert Star on a couple of occasions. I've spoken at Board of Supervisors meetings. The board at the time coming up to the census and redistricting disbanded the Morongo Basin Municipal Advisory Committee, and then it sat for well over a year. Supervisor Rao and her staff never posted vacancy announcement on the Facebook page of the Morongo Basin MAC. When she was interviewed by Gary Daigneault in February, she said that she would let it go for another 6 months before taking any further action. And then she promptly in May was the sponsor of the board resolution to disband the MAC. So we have no MAC, we have no voice. And I just want to hear from the candidates what they would do to ensure that the Morongo Basin has an effective voice in county government. Thank you.
Ray, I'm pretty sure they already answered that during the questions. They already answered that question during the other segment, right? Nikki? Yeah.
My
They already,
apologies then, I was late getting here.
okay. Um,
It'll be on the, we'll have a recording.
yeah, we'll have a recording you can look at. You can always contact them directly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Is it Sarah that had the question up on the chat?
Steve next and then Sarah.
Who?
Steve,
Okay. Was Steve before James?
it doesn't matter, you can alternate, it's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. So my question is related to it, as the candidates that are running for Board of Supervisors know, that if a candidate receives over 50% plus one in this election, the primary election, they win the election outright. The issue with our electoral system right now is that primary elections differ from general elections. Primary elections are lower turnout, disproportionately wider, wealthier, typically more homeowners, so that produces more skewed outcomes. So I'm curious to hear from our candidates whether they support replacing lower turnout primary elections with a single general election using ranked choice voting that produces a majority winners. And I should preface this by saying that the City of San Bernardino's Charter Review Committee unanimously supported this idea because we're one of the few local governments that also has a primary system as well. So hopefully you can shed light on your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Who wants to go first? Sorry.
It's a short answer, but I think yes, I think we need to look at it. It's a pretty simple reason, as James mentioned. It's when we have elections in March and it's game over in March because the electorate isn't truly representative of our county population. I think that's an issue. And you're seeing that right now on the county board. You know, it's a nonpartisan seat, of course, but I think there's 4 conservatives on that board, and this county does not have 80% conservative population, okay? It's much more Democrat than it is Republican. And look, I don't care what party you're from. I'm not gonna govern based on party. That's never been the way I do things. But I'll tell you what, when you have elections like you do in March that lead to board representation the way you have it now, something needs to change. That's not gonna change in this election. What will change is I'm gonna go knock on 15 to 20,000 doors. I'm gonna wear out my shoes. I'm gonna go out and reach out and touch the voter because that's what they deserve. And that's gonna win the election. We'll figure out the rest later, but that's what's gonna win the election. And once we get there, we can start making reform to our charter and future elections.
I don't have a lot to add to this other than I completely agree. I think particularly as Democrats, speaking to Democrats, knowing that Republican turnout in the primary is going to be higher. The system is rigged against us from the start. I'm absolutely a choice in voting reform. I think this is not just an issue that relates to this county. This is a nationwide issue, but this is a subject for another time. Similar to Chris, I am doing this campaign full time. I will be putting many, many miles on my car. I will be knocking on doors. I'll be meeting people all throughout this district, both Republican and Democrat. Ultimately, this is a nonpartisan seat. I'm sitting here as a Democrat in front of Democrats, but I'm not doing this for the Democratic Party. I'm doing this for the county and for our community.
Thank you. So March primaries, challenging to say the least. I mean, how many people are going to actually vote? Not that many, right? Very little. It just seems unfair that we get to allow just 20% of the people to have the say and ignore 80%. Having to reach out to that 80% is our challenge. We don't have any other choice but to meet that challenge this time around. But maybe next year we can do something about it. So let's try to knock on as many doors as we can, the three of us, and we're gonna get this county.
This is why we need volunteers to make those 600 phone calls also. Who was first on Zoom? Steve Bardwell, go ahead, please, and please speak loudly.
Yes, hello. In the interest of gaining more input from distinct communities, I look at the Planning Commission at the time that they reviewed the proposal to have 247 declared a scenic highway. There were members of the Planning Commission that had never driven Highway 247. So please, if you would, candidates, respond to the idea of forming 4 distinct planning commissions, one for each area of the county, one for the valley, one for the mountains, one for the North Desert, and one for the East Desert. This would be a way to gain some distinct community. Thank you.
Does anyone want to speak to that? It's more of a comment. Go ahead.
I'm all about breaking up the planning commission or planning plans with the different communities. You can't have it central in a county this big, what, the biggest county in our country? And you want one planning commission? That's crazy. We need to break it up. I love your idea. We need to have each area have its own little planning commission because they're gonna know the ins and outs. They're gonna be able to get the community input, unlike where it is now centrally located. It just doesn't really do it well, doesn't do it justice.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anybody else?
I mean, just to reiterate what I said before, I think it's important we have representation and distinction between each of this county's very different geographies reflected in building code and planning permission. So in terms of separating the mountains, the desert, the urban areas, I think we absolutely need input from those areas in particular because they are very different communities with very different challenges.
I think it's an interesting idea, something I would definitely like to explore. I don't know what the answer is right now, but I can tell you I support anything that empowers people and empowering their voice. And this is a good vehicle for it, so we should take a look at it. It's a good idea.
Anybody in person have a question?
This is for you, Chris. The other two candidates took position on a cap for short-term rentals. Oh my goodness. So Chris, this is specific, a question for you. In the question about homelessness, including the impact of short-term rental businesses, the other two candidates took a position on a cap on those businesses that are in residential neighborhoods. Have you taken a position on a cap?
No, but yes. I'm definitely open to that. I think issues that are impacting our community and our residents and their quality of life, like the short-term rentals are. I think that is something that you can look at. You see it all the time. Liquor licenses. I mean, there's a cap on all kinds. There's regulation on all kinds of different industries. And I think with short-term rentals, that is something where it's clearly in the Morongo Basin and up on the mountain. It's impacting communities. It's taking away their quality of life. So I'm not sure what that cap should be, but we should definitely look at that. Absolutely.
Who is next on Zoom? Who?
Sarah.
Go ahead, Sarah, and please speak loudly.
Hi, I am wondering if you could speak to the status of mental and behavioral health care in our county and what you would do and what you would have the power to do on the Board of Supervisors to improve it.
So I would look into funding to go towards the health clinics that provide these services for the mental and behavioral health services. The challenge is finding people to take those jobs. The challenge is paying those people enough. A primary care provider typically gets paid 15% more than a behavioral health care specialist. And that's not very attractive if you're trying to look for a job in this area. The other issue is housing. Okay, there's a job here, I can be a behavioral health specialist, but where am I going to live? Where can I afford it? So maybe some of the funding that we get can help go towards paying that person's housing. Other things that we can do is maybe create teams for the mental and behavioral health services. It doesn't have to be just one therapist. It can include a coach. It can include someone that helps them find a job and housing. It could be just a regular advocate for them. It could be a team effort that would help that individual rather than just the one specialist. Some people need a team. Sometimes I need a team. I got a little team right here, but I need more.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I cannot underestimate the importance of mental health. I have been dealing with this on a very personal level over the last few weeks. My friend was shot at gunpoint. The person who shot her was dealing with mental health issues, and part of the reason this tragedy happened is because that person didn't have the right care. I can tell you not what I do on the County Board of Supervisors, I can tell you what I'm doing right now. I'm working with one of my friends who runs the Desert Age Project in Palm Springs. We are pulling together a list of mental health providers locally who work on sliding fee scales, who provide a first session for free. The first step here is collating and combining all the resources and making sure people know where to go to get the help they need. If elected to the Board of Supervisors, would I prioritize mental health and provide free access, low-income access to care? Absolutely. This is an important problem that needs to get addressed, because the quicker we address mental health, the more serious problems we can solve in the future, or prevent in the future.
I agree with Graham and Jennifer. I'm proud of our country that mental health has become much more of a priority these past 10, 15 years than it ever was in the past, but we have a long way to go. I don't know everything a county board supervisor can do on this issue. I need to learn more about that, but I will. And I can tell you right now that I know that it's under-resourced. I know the departments are across the board under-resourced. We need to do what we can to bring proper funding to those vulnerable communities and vulnerable populations.
And to actually use the funding we do have would be nice. Who is next on Zoom?
Lorraine was next. I have a question too.
Okay, so not Zoom then?
We just had some.
Okay, because Paula's hand's been up for a while. Who is that?
He says get his hand up.
I put my hand up again. I just have a comment, a very quick comment. There's a woman in Joshua Tree who had a cabin on her property who wanted it to become a Airbnb. She, because of business, not the SD. But anyway, she went through all the hoops with San Bernardino County. She got them to come and inspect. They did solar, they inspected. They did septic, they inspected. They put a bathroom freestanding, a plush water bathroom, but nonetheless inspected. Then they were scheduled for the final inspection, and the people showed up and said, "We cannot grant you a permit because you are off the grid." And she said, "What?" Because through the whole process, they had said this was fine. And then in the end, because she doesn't have any electricity from Southern California Edison, she can't be permitted for using that cabin. This to me is crazy. Just to let you guys know.
Thank you, Paula.
I have a really out of left wing, bizarre question for you, just to give you an opportunity to flex your mental muscles. Years back, I watched a documentary called Walmart, High Cost of Low Prices. Those of you who are residents here know the impact that the Walmarts have had on our community, on small businesses, wages, and the direct correlation to the homeless population in our area. I understand that the time of the making of that documentary, something like 1,000 cities in the United States have banned issuing Walmart permits to build and come and operate in their communities. Can you possibly imagine a situation where you might propose and or support legislation to that effect in the county?
Hi. So I'm not a fan of the large corporations. I admit I have shopped at Walmart. That's my confession today. Darn it. But I'd rather them not be here. I'd rather that there be other options, small businesses that offer their products, so I can support those people that live here. If there was something coming across saying, okay, we're not having this big box store in this community, and I would look at it and I would say, you know what? I don't think we need it. I don't think we need another big box store. I think we need to support our small communities with small businesses. Plus, they're not very environmentally friendly, and they usually get money from the fossil fuel companies, which I'm not a fan of either. So that's my bit.
This one's a little bit out of left field, but I have really personal experience with this in the sense that we have a tiny cottage in northern Michigan. I know it's really random, but historically there was a thriving local community there. About 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, Walmart came into town and completely shut down the main street, completely decimated, totally destroyed. The problems with Walmart aren't just what they do to the communities in which they sit. Because Walmart has such incredible pricing pressure, it means that independent retailers in other communities are then passed on higher prices, and it makes goods more expensive for people in rural communities, and it ultimately puts those stores out of business. I think my priority as county supervisor, particularly living in a small community, is making small business easier in this county. Because right now it is really, really hard. A friend of mine opened a barber shop in Chino Hills and told me it cost him $30,000 in permit fees to open a barber shop. My priority here is make businesses easier to open, make this a small business friendly environment, make it a small business friendly county, and earn your money on the tax revenue from the growth you provide to these communities. Make that easier. I can't say what I would say if someone says, can we open a Walmart here, because that's a case-by-case basis, and I honestly can't say how much authority there would be in any particular neighborhood, but that is fundamentally how I feel as a human being, and particularly as a resident of a small community, I want to see small business thrive first.
I think we need to do what we can to promote small business. And I think like Graham said, you need to take a look at these big box, projects on a case by case. I remember Dollar General down the street, and that one's there now, but that was a big fight, right? Because the local community didn't want it. So when it comes to Walmart, I think you have to look at, is it going to be beneficial in any way for the local community? If they want it, okay, let's take a look. If they don't want it, let's take a look. But absolutely, I think we could do a better job of promoting small business in our local communities.
Lorraine and then Deborah, thank you.
Hi, last election cycle, the county of San Bernardino voted to secede from the state of California. And I believe there's a commission in place right now with the County Board of Supervisors. And I would like to know what your stance on that is and what can you do about it?
This one's unbelievable to me. I just don't understand that mindset. You don't agree with something doesn't mean, you give the middle finger to people and you try to secede from California, which is never going to happen, okay? No, you roll up your sleeves. You go up to the governor's office. You go up to the state legislature. You go out to DC. You form relationships. You do the hard work. That's what it takes. If you're not willing to do the hard work, you shouldn't be in that seat. I think the ultimate irony of the whole thing is that the whole point is, hey, we're not getting our fair share back from the state and the feds, and that's true for a lot of communities, and it's absolutely true for San Bernardino County. Interestingly, when we get the $4.6 million from the federal government, we're not using it. We give it back, okay? They voted on secession. They're spending our taxpayer dollars to study that issue. And yet, the next day we get hit with the March blizzard. They're waving the white flag because, oh, well, wait a minute, we can't handle our own crisis. We need the state, we need the federal government to come on in. I think that's hypocritical.
Well said.
I'm going to agree 100% with Chris. I think this is an absolute joke, and I think that for a lot of reasons. You might not recognize the accent or know it, but believe it or not, I'm actually British. I am dual citizen, UK and US. I spent 12 years living in London. I lived through the Brexit vote. I've seen what that has done to that country, and I can tell you that anyone who voted for it is now regretting that decision because it has worked out so badly for them. I think this is a much more clean and dry situation in terms of there is, one, no reason to do it. Two, it's already been proven by the California Supreme Court that this is illegal in their minds after the Cal 3 proposal in 2018. So it is in my mind, it is a completely toothless threat to people in Sacramento. So instead of getting us more resources, which I agree, I think we need more resources, we are making ourselves the laughingstock of Sacramento. San Bernardino County is roughly 3%, give or take, of the GDP of California. So if we say, screw you guys, we're going home, what's their incentive to say no? They'll say, yeah, okay, go for it, just do it, right? How is that gonna leave us? We're then, in terms of GDP, the 40th largest state in the US with no real power, no real position. So instead of spending money, taxpayer resources on studying secession, one, cut that out, stop it, put that money to literally anything else. And then two, let's start doing interesting things and give California a reason to give us more money. Let's electrify our heavy machinery. Let's use that leadership position in transport and logistics to do something interesting and get that funding. That's how you get the money. You don't give them the middle finger because they've got no incentive to say yes.
So the idea of having San Bernardino County separate from California, is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Silly, oh my gosh.
It was voted, yes.
Okay, so I heard about this on the vote, and I just want to make sure that's what we're talking about, because that's just crazy. But it makes me wonder, where does this come from? What are those people's underlying issues that made them think, this is a great idea? Lack of education, lack of information, misinformation, disinformation, whatever you want to call it. We need to maybe help educate our fellow community members on that side and get them over here where we have common sense and we have local representation to help talk to more of the community members face to face. Because maybe where they're at right now, they feel so far and out of touch. They are just seeing Fox News or other outlets that are on the right wing and they're not getting the right information. So we need to educate our own people in our own communities. And we won't have this silly thing come up again, I hope.
Jennifer,
Yes.
can I talk?
Just a second, Paula.
Okay.
Jennifer's been waiting. I can tell you exactly why that question was on the ballot. That question was on the ballot to make sure that every Republican would vote. It was just to make people angry and get them into the voting place. My question for you all is related to the Airbnbs, STRs. When people build a house specifically to be rented out, why are they treated as homeowners rather than commercial enterprises? Why are these companies that have 10 or 20 or 50 Airbnbs not treated as commercial enterprises? Why are their homes not paying the correct rate of tax? Or maybe they are, I don't know, but I feel like I've got an Airbnb at every corner of my home. 4 corners, 4 Airbnbs. Actually, one was just sold to a private person, so it's only 3, but hey, it's only 3 right in my immediate, proximity. And there are like 5 more down this street and 5 more down that street and 20 more on the other street, and it's just crazy. It used to be a quiet neighborhood with senior citizens, and then they all sold out and made their money on their homes, but now we're stuck with the result. I just feel like these people are not treated as not treated as commercial businesses with those kind of responsibilities and, potential for fines, etc. It's kind of a wishy-washy state, and I just wonder if you think that's something that the Board of Supervisors could do to sort of recast that business as business rather than just a little side hustle for Joe and Mary who have an extra house.
Especially if it's a corporation that owns them.
Yeah.
There's actually one more thing I want to say on this session that I forgot to say before, and then I'll get to the STR question, which is that I think the voter here got duped. If you read the proposition on the ballot, it reads to the effect of, do you want the Board of Supervisors to do everything we can in our power to get more resources from the state of California, up to and including secession? Before that, all of those things are your day job. That is what you're supposed to be doing every day. So it doesn't surprise me that people voted by a narrow margin for this to pass. As it relates to STRs, I think the tax basis and the fee basis for these businesses need to change. I think there's a big difference between someone running an STR on their property or across the street. A bunch of our friends up the mountain who live either full-time in the mountain or split their time between one and the other, they rent their place out responsibly. Some of them own houses across the street that they manage themselves. They are responsible STR owners that are contributing to the economy of our local community. That's the STR business that I think we should encourage, because we all live in areas that require our tourism. We need some people up here spending money in our stores and supporting our economy. So I want to make sure that we're encouraging that type of STR, not corporations who are buying 5, 10, 500 houses around these areas. So I don't know what the right answer is yet in terms of how to tax people, but I don't think it should be a single fee per house. I think it should be based on occupancy, I think it should be based on the size of the house, and ultimately the more money that STR brings in, the more tax that person or that business should pay.
I think it's a great question. I don't know the answer, but I'll look into it, I'll get back to you, and I'll take a position on that.
Jennifer? You're next, yeah.
So there are 2 types of Airbnbs that I can see. The type where one person owns that property and they have a second unit, and maybe they want to rent that out as an Airbnb. And then you've got the other type, that's a corporation that owns 6, 7, 8 properties. It's a business, it's a corporation. They're not part of the community. I don't think that should be allowed. I think we need to create some very creative verbiage resolutions that says this is the Airbnb that's allowed, this type of ownership, this is the type of tax that would be extracted from this type versus this type. So by square feet, by number of bedrooms, yes, those should be factors into how much of the tax. And then of course, stipulating where that tax money goes. Back to the community where that Airbnb is located. So definitely need to get rid of the corporate type Airbnbs. We need to have a cap, maybe 10% is the answer, somewhere around there. Right now my neighborhood has 5 on the street, and it's about 25 to 30% of the whole neighborhood that are Airbnbs. Too many. This guy needs friends, not visitors from LA. So that are my thoughts.
Thank you. For years, we've been asking for that, for the money from the Airbnbs to come back to our communities. We have a lot, even in Little Morongo Valley, and we've gone to the Board of Supervisors, and they haven't done, they say, oh, it's too complicated and we can't do that. So I do think that's something we really need to work on. The other question I have is, I have not heard one person today in this room talk about the issue of water. Development, I know Morongo Valley has 2 catchment basins. All of our water comes from Big Bear, the runoff from Big Bear. And I realize this year has been a very wet year for the Morongo Basin, or for all of California, really. But that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. And I am concerned about the overconsumption of water and projects getting approved without having them look into how much water they're going to use, if the water is available. I mean, already Yucca Valley and I think Joshua Basin Water District import water. Well, everybody's trying to get more water for their communities. How much longer will we be able to get that? And I think that the Planning Commission has got to put that into the requirements when they approve some kind of a project. I know we've worked really hard for that in Morongo Valley.
So if I remember correctly, Airbnbs are considered vacant. They're not considered occupied, like you in your house and me in my house. That's a problem when they're trying to figure out the calculations of water supply and water needs and water rates. Water maintenance. They're getting skewed numbers if they're not being able to count all those houses that technically have people using the water but are considered vacant. So that's something that needs to change, along with a lot of other rules for these Airbnbs, but that's definitely one of them. How do we count them? Occupied or not? Well, yes, there's people there using the water. They need to be counted as occupied, and that's going to impact the plans for water use, where it comes from, and future supplies.
I'm not going to say I have an immediate answer to this problem, and I know how to solve it. What I can tell you is my experience dealing with our local municipal water districts. We often have to buy water from Lake Arrowhead. Sometimes we sell water to Lake Arrowhead, and it is really important to all us that we become self-sustaining and we've got enough water to support all of our residents. I spent 12 years of my life living in the UK. I have seen how countries outside of the US manage water issues. Now, the UK, as we all know, is blessed with a lot more rainfall and water than we have here. But even in times of drought in England, hose pipe bans are implemented in summer to curb water usage in times of extreme need. I haven't seen enough, I think, being done on that side of things in this country and in this area. As a, for instance, in our neighborhood, there are 150 houses and there's one corporate user of water. You walk in their property, and it is stunning, right? And you talk to the owner and you say, hey, what do you do? How do your trees look so good? And he says, I give them a shit ton of water, right? And fine, it looks beautiful, but he is taking water from our precious reserves and funneling it into his park. So I don't know what the right answer is, but I think these are things we need to have on the table because this problem is getting worse. It's not getting better. Water is becoming a more precious resource. More people are moving into this district, and we need smart solutions to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I've spent the past 8 years on my local water board down in Highland, San Bernardino, working on this exact issue. And it's, can we become independent from other communities, from Northern California, in terms of where we get our water? It takes a lot of work. When we first dreamed up the idea of the Sterling Natural Resource Center, people laughed at us. They told us, you don't get it. You don't understand inland empire politics, how obstructionist it is. You don't understand water politics. This project will never get done. And if it does get done, it's going to take 25 years to do it. Well, we're about to flip off the light switch 8 years later, okay? And that project alone for down in the valley is going to produce enough water to support all of 105,000 ratepayers for their indoor use in perpetuity, period. We need to do a better job all the way down, from county board down to local municipalities, in terms of investing in our water projects, investing in our local aquifers, investing in water infrastructure. And we're not doing that, but I think the county board has an opportunity there, right? What are we doing to capture flood water? We're not doing a whole lot, okay? That's a missed opportunity. We keep hearing about it. Well, how come no one's doing anything to take action on it? These are things that we need to look at when we take that seat next year. But great question. Thank you.
Okay, you guys, we're gonna need to wrap it up pretty soon because we have to be out of here by noon. Do we have any last questions? Okay, this doesn't look like it. All right, I wanted to thank you, the candidates, so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Let's win this seat.
I have to say, it looks, I mean, in a perfect world, 2 out of the 3 of you would be on the ballot in November. I don't know if we can make that happen, if we can work that hard, but.
I like how you think.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Liz. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone, for coming.